It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Austria. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Austria's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors to categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, seemingly off the squad, and retired or off the squad for a significant period. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode will have three sections. Section one, where we look at some general information on the team. Section two, the main part, where we cover the candidates in each position and their likelihood of making it. And section three, where we summarize and have some concluding business. Let's begin then with section one. So just some general information on the team. We begin with retirements. This could be actually players we know to be retired or bigger names that have not appeared for the national team for a significant period. So our first of three is Martin Hinteregger. He was with the team from 2013 to 2022 with 67 caps and 4 goals. And he was a starter in Euro 2016 and in 2020, last appearing for the national team in March of 2022. Next, we have Julian Baumgartlinger. And he was with the team from 2009 to 2021 with 84 caps. He actually has retired from soccer altogether in 2023. And he was a starter in Euro 2016, the captain in Euro 2020, although he just appeared as a substitute there, and last appeared for the national team on the bench in June of 2021. Finally, we have central defender Alexander Dragovic, and he was with the team from 2009 to 2022, 100 caps exactly and 2 goals, and was a starter in 2016 and 2020 Euro Cups, and last appeared for the national team in March of 2022. So all those three players do not seem like candidates for this tournament. Let's move on to a little discussion of club affiliations for Austria. For a country of 10 or about 9 to 10 million, Austria has a stunning number of clubs, of smaller clubs for, as I say, for their population size. Their top clubs are Red Bull Salzburg, Rapid Vienna, Sturm Graz, and a few others. I would say mainly their secondary players play for these top clubs within Austria, but many of them move on to clubs outside of Austria, especially to Germany, and we find their top names playing for clubs in Germany. So we have Konrad Lehmer for Bayern Munich, and Marcel Sabitzer for Borussia Dortmund. A couple play for Borussia Mönchengladbach, including Stefan Lehmer and Maximilian Wober. All of these are kind of starters. And we have Nicholas Seewald, who is actually just brand new to the team in 2023, but has become an immediate starter for them. And then a couple outside of Germany. I should mention Xavier Schlager too with Leipzig. A couple outside of Germany, Marko Arnautovic for Inter Milan, and David Alaba still playing for Real Madrid. So those are probably the top names. I might have neglected a couple of players who are saying, hey, what about me? But we're just giving kind of a sense of it. So there we go. Stunning number of clubs, and also the birthplace of some impressive egos in Austria. Let's go on to recent games for Austria. Well, we're only going to go back a couple of tournaments here. So for Austria, they did make the 2016 Euro Cup and also the 2020 Euro Cup, but they didn't make a World Cup in that period in 2018 or 2020. So we will kind of point out players who were in recent tournaments. Let's move on to look at their formation. Oh no, I should say also that for participation in the period, we're looking at their games since the beginning of 2023, and that is 12 games in all. And actually that leads us nicely into the next section, which is their formations in those games. So generally, about 50% of the time, it's a 4-4-2 for Austria. And I include a 4-4-1-1 formation in there because it's quite similar. In 25% of the games, and actually the last 3 games, all of which were friendlies, it was a 4-2-3-1. So perhaps switching to that formation, or just perhaps experimenting with it in friendlies. The other 3 games, 25% of the games, were 3 games with 3 different formations. So we'll bring that up when it's relevant. But maybe keep in mind the 4-4-2 for most of the games in the first 3 quarters of the period, and then the 4-2-3-1 in the last quarter. Okay, let's move on then. The last item we have for this section is their upcoming games. So they have a friendly on June 4th at home to Serbia, and then on June 8th they play away in Switzerland. Those are their warm-up games for the period. Okay, let's move on to the candidates, and we begin with the manager. So I'm just finding my spot here. We begin with the manager, who is Ralf Rangnick. Ralf Rangnick has been their manager since 2022. He was manager of Manchester United in England prior to that, and has managed some big clubs in Germany, Leipzig a couple of times, and Schalke, and actually Schalke a couple of times. The list goes on, but generally German teams, as he is German. And we won't go back really to talk about before that. We'll leave that for the summary. And well, it's time to move on to the summary. So from 2018 to 2022, the manager was Franco Foda. So he led them to qualification for the 2022 Euro Cup, but he was let go when they failed to reach the 2022 World Cup. There they finished 4th in their group, but they did advance through Nations League play for the UEFA playoffs, and there they lost the first of 2 playoff rounds to Wales, so not reaching the World Cup there. So Foda was let go, and Rangnick took over in April 2022. So he is the manager for all of the games during this period. All of the decisions will be his. Okay, let's move on to goalkeepers, and we begin with a bit of a shock for Austria. Alexander Schläger, who is an injury concern. I'll talk more about that a bit later. Otherwise, he would be a definite candidate. And we have a likely candidate. I'm just going to fix up something that's bugging me in the graphics here. There we go. The next candidate is the likely Patrick Pence. And we have a possible candidate in Tobias Lawal. and then a possible but unlikely candidate in Nicholas Hedl. We have a couple of more experienced players who seem to be off the team. The first one is Daniel Bachmann, and the second one is Heinz Lindner. And we also have a third player who I'm going to call retired because he's been off the squad since June of 2021. That's Pavel Pervan. We won't go into more detail on him, but we might go into on the seemingly off the squad goalkeepers just because of the narrative, which you'll understand soon. So let's look at Alexander Schlager. He is 28 years old and has been with Austria since 2019. Just 15 caps in that time, though, and currently playing for Red Bull Salzburg in Austria. He was selected for the Euro 2020 squad, was a backup keeper behind Daniel Bachmann. However, he became the starting keeper 3 games into 2023. He started the 3rd game and went on to start 8 of their remaining 10 games there. He was actually ill for those first 2 matches, but he wasn't the starting keeper before that. Okay, Patrick Pence is a likely candidate. He's 27 years old with only 5 caps since 2022, so lacking a bit of experience here in their backup and arguably even in their starting keeper. Patrick Pence plays for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2023 and actually has been on loan to Brøndby in Denmark. Pence started 1 of their 12 games since the start of 2023. He was on the bench for 8 others and not selected for 3. So he looks like a backup keeper here. Tobias Lowell is our possible candidate. He's 23 years old, no caps for the national team, and he plays for Lask Linz in Austria since 2018. He got his first appearance on the bench recently in November 2023. Didn't start any games there, but was on the bench for all 4 games since that time. Possible but unlikely, basically Nicholas Hedl. I won't give the biography on him. Basically, he was brought into the squad at the start of 2023. Actually in November 2022, was on the bench for 7 games, but not selected for the last 4 matches. So it looks like Lowell took over his position probably as the 3rd string keeper there. I'm going to talk about Bachmann and Lindner because I can only guess they might call up one of these goalkeepers, even as a starting keeper, given the injury of Alexander Schlager. So Daniel Bachmann is 29 years old. Has been with Austria since 2021 with 14 caps and no goals, and plays for Watford in England since 2017. Not so much experienced in the number of caps, that's about the same as Schlager, but he does have experience in tournaments because he was a starting keeper in Euro 2020. So Daniel Bachmann actually returned after a 15-month absence in June 2023. He started 1 of their remaining 10 games, was on the bench for 3, and then not selected for the last 6 matches. So he was seemingly off the squad at this point, but may return. The other one is Heinz Lindner. He's more experienced than all of them. He's 34 years old and has been with Austria since 2012 with 36 caps, and he plays for Sion in Switzerland. He was actually on loan with Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium since 2024. He was a backup keeper in Euro 2016, but only selected for the preliminary squad in 2020 and didn't make the final cut. However, he did appear after that, last appearing for the team in March of 2023, so actually played the first 2 games of this recent period. So still kind of in contention. So let's talk about the summary of the position and make things clear, it was Lindner who played the first two games in 2023, but then was off the squad. Schlager became the starting keeper. He was benched for the fifth match and the second last match. Bachmann replaced him the first time, and Pence replaced him more recently in the first of the March 2024 games. However, Schlager is likely injured for the Cup. He went for surgery, or he was out for knee surgery since early May, and an unknown return date, but that does sound like it will keep him out of the Cup. So Pence seems next in line, but he only has 5 caps and kind of not that much experience. So, and also they'll be a short goalkeeper. They don't have a lot to choose from. So it seems the only solution is to call back either Bachmann or Lindner. For me, it would be Bachmann, the more likely of the two. Recalling them for their experience, both of them more experienced than the candidates that remain. So interesting developments. We'll have to look to the June games to see what they decide there. And we move on to central defenders. Okay, let's look at the candidates. I'll just say at the beginning here that it's always a 4-man backline for Austria. So we're looking for 2 candidates here. It'll be 2 central defenders starting if they continue with that pattern. And we have a definite candidate in Philipp Lienhart. So here too, an injury concern. I think he was an injury concern in back in March. I'll just try to check here whether I forgot to check whether he is still injured. Actually, he doesn't have an injury tag on him, Philipp Lienhart, so he's probably fine. Anyway, I'll continue introducing the candidates here. So Philipp Lienhart, a definite candidate. We have Maximilian Wober, who's coded as a central defender and has played a couple of games there, but we're moving him to left defense because that's his primary position during this period. And we're actually moving David Alaba in here. Of course, he is known as a left defender, but during this period, and in fact, since June of 2022, he has only started as a central defender. So we have David Alaba as a likely candidate here. We also have Kevin Danso as likely. 2 possible candidates in Flavius Daniluk and Leopold Querfeld. We have a possible but unlikely candidate in Samson Baidu. And several candidates who are either off the squad or retired, but I'm just going to name them and not go into detail on it. The first is Gernot Trauner. He actually played the first game in 2023 and hasn't been called up since. Marco Friedl. And then 2 of the players who we introduced as retired in section 1, Martin Hinteregger and Alexander Dragovic. Okay, and Marco Friedl last played in September 2022. Hinteregger in March 2022, and Dragovic in also March 2022. Let's go back and look at the candidates here. And we begin with Philipp Lienhart. And he is 27 years old and has 19 caps and 1 goal for the team since 2017. So actually hasn't been much of a starter until recently. I see he had a knee injury all the way to the end of the season, but he's not currently listed as an injury concern. So we'll maybe consider him as maybe injured there, but we'll come back to that at the end of the media cast. Philipp Lienhard is with Freiburg in Germany and was part of the 2020 Euro Cup, subbed into a couple of games there. But he's become a starter since, starting 8 of their 12 games since the start of 2023, and was out with 2 separate injuries for 4 others. The first 2 of 2023, and then the last 2 of the period in March 2024. And yes, didn't recover from that injury during his season with the club, but as I say, is not listed as injured in my sources here. Okay, next we have David Alaba, one of the biggest names for Austria, and he is 36 years old now. No, what am I talking about? He's 32 years old and has been with Austria since 2009 with 104 caps and 15 goals. So Alaba has been with Real Madrid in Spain since 2021 and with Bayern Munich for 11 years before that. He was a starter in both the 2016 and 2020 Euro Cup, but has not been starting as much since. He started 5 of their 12 games since the start of 2023. He subbed in for 2, and he also was out with 2 injuries, 2 separate injuries, including the last 2 matches, and not selected for one other. And very much like Philipp Lienhard, he was out with a cruciate ligament injury from late December until the end of the season, but is also not listed as being injured. So Lienhard and Alaba both in the same boat, and we'll talk about them at the end as kind of possible injuries, I'd have to say. As we said, Alaba has only started as a central defender here. We have a couple of other players also moved to other positions. I won't confuse things by naming them now, but rather I'll mention it when we do meet them. Our next candidate is the likely Kevin Danso. He's 25 years old and has been with Austria since 2017, but 18 caps and no goals, so also struggling for starts. Danso plays for Lens in France since 2021 and was not selected for the Euro 2020. However, he has started 6 of their 12 games over this period, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4. So the only match he wasn't called up for was one that he was injured for, and that's why we have Danso as a likely candidate. The first of our possible candidate is Flavius Daniluk, and he is 23 years old, been with Austria since 2023, just 2 caps there, 2 caps and no goals, and plays for Salernitana in Italy, but actually on loan to Red Bull Salzburg since 2024. He got his first appearance on the bench at the beginning of the period in March 2023, started 1 of their games and subbed in for 1, and was on the bench for 3. So 5 matches that he wasn't selected for, he was injured for 1. So Flavius Daniluk, a possible candidate. Leopold Querfeld is our other. He's just 20 years old and got his first cap in 2024. So just 1 cap for this Rapid Vienna player in Austria. He's been with Rapid Vienna since 2021. I was trying to speed things up there, but I failed miserably. Okay, so as we said, Querfeld got his first appearance on the bench. No, he got his first appearance on the bench in September 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 9 games. That was in March 2024, but he was on the bench for 2 others and with the under-21 team for 5 games too. So Querfeld also a possible candidate. Samson Baidu has been Basically out for the last four matches with separate injuries, two separate injuries. So it doesn't look like a candidate. He got his first cap in October 2023. So just got a look in at the team, but injuries seem to have undermined his chances until now. So that is it, really. We just have a couple of strong candidates here, and the injuries are going to cause trouble because they don't really have a lot of depth in terms of candidates for central defenders. So in summary of the position, always a four-man back line, as we said, with two central defenders. And it has been our two potentially injured players, Lionheart and left-back Alaba, as the most common pairing. They paired for 5 games, and then Lionheart and Danso were a pair for 2 games. Danso actually has been fairly regular since the start of the period, and he did pair with 4 different players in the first 2 games and the last 2 games. And then we have several players who played single games, with right-back Wober playing twice. So right-back Wober, who will meet shortly, will be a candidate in this position, playing out of position. Okay, let's go to left back, and immediately we do meet Maximilian Wober. He's a definite candidate here, and is actually coded as a central defender. So will definitely, or almost certainly, move back into central defence if those 2 players are injured. We also have a likely candidate in Philip Mwini. Of course, David Alaba, known as a left back, but we've moved him to central defence here. We have a possible candidate in Alexander Prass, and players who seem to be off the squad. Andreas Olma, he's got 32 caps, but hasn't appeared since March of 2023. And David Schnegg, kind of a newer candidate who doesn't seem to have made it onto the squad. So let's look at the candidates who do seem likely. Maximilian Wober is 26 years old and has been with Austria since 2017. He has 23 caps and no goals, and plays for Leeds United in England since 2023. But he was loaned to Borussia Dortmund, a bigger club, since 2023. Wober has not been selected for a tournament yet, despite being on the team during the 2020 Euro Cup. He wasn't selected even for the preliminary squad, but he has since started 6 of their 12 games since the start of 2023, subbed in for 4, on the bench for 1, and injured for 1, so always called up, and as we saw, probably becoming more important if there are injuries back here. Philip Mwini is coded as a right defender, but we've moved him to left defence because this is where he's played mostly during the period. Philip Mwini is 30 years old and has been with Austria since 2021 with 11 caps and no goals. And he plays for Mainz in Germany, actually. His second stint with them since 2023. His second stint is since 2023. He actually was named to the preliminary squad, having never appeared for the national team before for the Euro 2020. He didn't make the final cut there, but over the past year and a half, he's started 7 of their 12 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. And the only matches he was not called up for were 2 matches where he was injured. So Philip Mwini, a likely candidate here. We also have a possible candidate, Alexander Prass. He's 22 years old. Since 2022, he has 9 caps and no goals, and he plays for Sturm Graz in Austria since 2021. He's coded as a left midfielder, but his only His only starts were as a left back in this period. He started 2 of their 12 games and was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, but not selected for 7 matches. So kind of struggling to work his way into the team, Alexander Prass. And let's go back and summarize the position of left back. So perhaps most significantly, you're not hearing the name of David Alaba here. It is Wober who has played 4 times and Mwini 6 times. And Mwini seems to have the position because he started the last 3 matches. And then 2 other players each played single games. So yeah, what I think is going to happen here is that Wober will move back to central defence and Mwini will be the left back. Let's go to the right backs and look at the candidates. We have Stefan Posch as a likely candidate. Again, he's coded as a central defender, but we're moving him to this position because it's where he's played the most. Philip Mwini is a right back also, but we moved him to left defence. We also have Stefan Lehner here as a possible candidate. So just 2 candidates to introduce. Stefan Posch is 27 years old. He's been with Austria since 2019 with 30 caps and 1 goal and plays for Bologna in Italy since 2023, Hoffenheim in Germany before that there. And Posch was selected for the Euro Cup in 2020, but was on the bench for that tournament. And he started 7 of their 12 games since the start of 2023. He was subbed in for 3 and injured for 2. So Stefan Posch now a likely candidate here. And I should say actually that for Euro 2020 he wasn't even on the bench for the first 3 games. A bit of a long story behind that, but we won't get into it. Our possible candidate is Stefan Lehner, and he is 32 years old, and plays for Austria since 2017 with 39 caps and 2 goals. And he's been with Borussia Mönchengladbach in Germany since 2019. Stefan Lehner was a starter in the Euro 2020 and was actually off the team for a while before this period. For a 16-month absence. That included a short bout with cancer. He returned in March of 2024 and started one of their 2 remaining games. One of their 2 remaining games there. So Stefan Lehner kind of coming back into the team here. And let's look at the position of right back in summary. So primarily it was Posch who started 7 of the 12 games. He was injured for 2 of them, and central midfielder Seewald replaced him. That was 2 games in October. Otherwise, 3 players had single games in the position, and that included Stefan Lehner on his return in March. For the first of the March games there. So Stefan Posch looking like the likely starter here, but doesn't always start there, actually just slightly more than half of the games. Okay, that brings us to the end of defenders, and we move on to the midfield, and we begin with defensive midfielders. We're going to combine this position with central midfielders. So we have a likely candidate in Florian Grillitsch, and then the player we introduced as basically retired, which is Julian Baumgartlinger. Or actually, yes, he definitely is retired. Okay, let's look at these players. Florian Grillitsch is 28 years old, and he has 41 caps and 1 goal since 2017. In Euro 2020, he was selected. He was a substitute, but then got a starting position for the last group stage game and for the round of 16 game. Since the beginning of 2023, Grilic has started 4 of their 12 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, and not selected for 3 matches, but those were the first 3 matches in the period. So we have Grilic as a likely candidate here. Yes, Julian Baumgartner last appeared in June of 2021, so is well off the squad. And I just urge you to not confuse him with Christoph Baumgartner, who we'll meet later. In fact, I think I just made the mistake that some of the audience might make, which is confusing the two. I called him Baumgartner, whereas it's really Julian Baumgartlinger. Okay, again, we'll move on to the central midfielders before summarizing the positions. So here we have Niklas Seewald as a definite candidate, and then Xavier Schlager as a also a definite candidate. Xavier Schlager, not to be confused with goalkeeper Alexander Schlager. We also have a possible but unlikely candidate at central midfield. That is Dejan Ljubicic. So let's meet these candidates. Niklas Seewald, 23 years old and has been with Austria since 2021 with 22 caps and no goals. So he plays for Leipzig in Germany since 2023 and was with Red Bull Salzburg before that. I think I made a mistake of saying he was new to the team. He is, in my mind, he's new to the team since Euro 2020, since he wasn't a consideration for that tournament. But since 2021 has really taken on Austria by storm, starting 11 of their 12 games over the recent period and on the bench for 1 other. So Niklas Seewald quickly becoming an important player for them. Xavier Schlager is another injury concern, much like the others, out with a cruciate ligament injury since mid-May and an unknown return date. So actually his injury is more recent there. It also, though, looks like he is not going to be available for the club, like his namesake, Alexander Schlager. I'll introduce him, though, because he would have been a definite candidate, and if he returns, will be. He's 26 years old and has been with Austria since 2018 with 43 caps and 4 goals. And like Seewald, plays for Leipzig in Germany. And he, unlike Seewald, he was part of Euro 2020, a starter in that tournament. And Schlager has started 8 of their 12 games since the beginning of 2023. He was subbed in for 2 and injured for 2, so a definite candidate. Okay, so those are the candidates here. Again, a bit thin in bench strength here. And if they do have Schlager injured, it could pose a problem. I'll summarize the position of central and defensive midfielder. I have to say they're a bit thin in this area, not many candidates for what is usually a 2-man defensive midfield. So about 75% of the time it is that. The 3 formations where they used a single, with the 3 formations which they used only a single time, had 3 midfielders twice and 1 midfielder once. The 1 midfielder we call a stopper role. So almost always it is newcomer Seewald alongside one of the others, and Schlager is one of the others, and to a lesser degree Grilic. We did see, though, that Seewald played as a right back in October. In that case, Schlager and Grilic paired in both games. We also have 5 players here who I won't mention by name, who came in for a single appearance, and that was usually when the formation was irregular. So defensive midfielders and central midfielders. is done. Let's move on to left and right midfielders. And actually, this position only existed in the 4-3-3 formation, or only exists in the 4-3-3 formation, which Austria used only once. So none of the players coded as left or right midfielders actually played in that game. So here we have basically players coded, and if they have been playing in other positions, we've moved them. Um, so our first candidate is a possible candidate, Florian Kainz. And he's 31 years old and has been with the team since 2015, 27 caps and 1 goal, and he plays for FC Cologne in Germany since 2019. He wasn't selected for either of the Euro Cups in 2016 or 2020, and since the beginning of 2023 has started 2 games, subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 4, but not selected for the last 2 matches. So fairly regularly called up, but not recently. And he started once as a left attacker and once as a right attacker. So we're just kind of dispensing with him here because he doesn't play a big part there. We have another player coded as a left midfielder. I should have introduced him before talking about Kainz. And that is Karim Onisiwo. He last appeared for the national team in September 2023, but I will say that he was selected for Euro 2020. But we won't dwell on him because he seems unlikely here. And that is all the left midfielders we're going to talk about here. And we have some right midfielders too. Andreas Weimann as a possible candidate, and Valentino Lazaro as a player seemingly off the squad. He last appeared in June of 2022. He was on the Euro 2020 squad, Lazaro. And we also have Christopher Trimmel, who seems to be off the squad. In fact, both of these have been off since 2022. So we've been putting them in the retired section. Here, Christopher Trimmel last appeared in September 2022, also though on the Euro 2020 squad. Okay, so we only have Weimann to introduce here. We have actually moved a couple of players, Marcel Sabitzer and Marko Arnautovic, who are coded as right midfielders, but have been playing further upfield, in fact. Andreas Weimann is 32 years old, been with Austria since 2012, with 23 caps and 2 goals. He plays for Bristol City in England, or at least was on their roster, but is actually on loan to West Bromwich Albion, also in England. And I should say that these loan spells will be over, or maybe over now that the season is over, but I'm going to behave as if it's kind of the end of the season, because if they are moving, we don't know where they're going yet. Okay, so Weimann not selected for the Euro 2016 campaign, and was off the team for a while. But he did come back to the team, and since the start of 2023, he was subbed in for the last 2 games. Since the start of 2023. So yeah, over the last year and a bit, he's subbed in for the last 2 games, on the bench for the first 2 of those, and not selected for 6 others. He was injured for a couple too. So possibly on the team, but not a strong candidate, Andreas Weimann. Okay, so those players all coded as right and left midfielders. None of them strong candidates. We move upfield to left attacking midfielders. So kind of creating a new category here. And what this is basically the left upper quadrant of the field. So depending on the formation, it can be a different position. In Austria's usual formation of a 4-4-2, it's a winger role. But we saw in the last three games they've been playing a 4-2-3-1. In that case, it's a left attacking midfield role. And the one time they used the 4-3-3, it was a left forward or right forward role. Okay, let's look at the candidates. We have like the candidate in Patrick Wimmer on this side, and then also likely is Marcel Sabitzer. And Wimmer is coded as a right winger, Marcel Sabitzer as a right midfield. We're moving them based on where they played in this position. But Marco Grohl, our possible candidate, is correctly labeled as a left winger, so is on this side. Okay, let's look at them. And first, Patrick Wimmer. We've moved him to left attacker from his coding as right winger. He's 22 years old and has 10 caps and no goals since 2023, and he plays for Wolfsburg in Germany since 2022. And over this period, he has started 5 of their 12 games since the start of 2023, subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1. And the only matches he missed were 2 matches due to injury. So Patrick Wimmer, often selected and a likely candidate here. Marcel Sabitzer is 30 years old, also a likely candidate, and has 78 caps and 17 goals since 2012. So one of the more experienced players on the team is Sabitzer, and he plays for Borussia Dortmund in Germany since 2023 and was with Bayern Munich for a couple of years before that, also loaned to Manchester United. He was part of Euro 2016 and the 2020 tournaments. He was actually a sub in Game 1 in 2016, but gained a starting position and was a starter in the 2022 edition, the 2020 edition. Sabitzer started 5 of their 12 games since the start of 2023. He subbed in for 5 also, was on the bench for 1. And however, he was not selected for the last match. So we don't think that's a really big threat to his selection, but it caused us to move him down to the likely level. He is their co-top scorer with 4 of their 17 goals in Euro qualification for this cup. So Sabitzer, a likely candidate. Marco Grohl, the only one actually coded correctly as a left attacker. Over here, returned after, he is 26 years old, and he has 4 caps and no goals since 2021 with Austria. He plays for Rapid Vienna in Austria since 2021, and he was off the team. He returned after a 19-month absence in October 2023 and didn't start any of their games, but subbed in for the last one and was on the bench for the first 2, so not selected for 4 matches in the middle there, so mostly in November. Yes, okay, let's summarize the position of left attacker. And in their usual formation, as we said, it's a winger role. So towards the beginning, it was primarily a winger playing it, but right winger Patrick Wimmer. Towards the end, when it was an attacking midfielder role, it was primarily Sabitzer. And here too, we have a bunch of players to confuse things by playing single games. We have 4 players playing single games in this position over this period. Anyway, Wimmer and Sabitzer, the main candidates, Sabitzer more recently. Over on the right side, we have a definite candidate in Konrad Laimer. He's coded as an attacking midfielder, but he's been playing here. And the only other one we have is Christopher Lang, a possible but unlikely candidate. Okay, let's look at them. Konrad Laimer, 27 years old, and has been with Austria since 2019 with 34 caps and 4 goals. And he plays for Bayern Munich in Germany since 2023 and was with Leipzig for 6 years before that. He was a starter in the Euro 2020 Cup and has started 10 of their 12 games over this period, injured for 2 others. So Konrad Laimer, a definite candidate. Our possible but unlikely candidate is Christopher Lang. And he first appeared on the bench in March of 2024. He was subbed in for the first game, but then with the under-21 team for the other. So with the under-21 team is basically like being off the squad because they would be called up to the senior team if they were wanted. So Christopher Lang, possible but unlikely. Let's summarize this position. Usually it is Konrad Laimer, although he does start in other positions too. Attacking midfielder Baumgartner, who we'll meet soon, appeared twice in this position, and then 2 players have had single starts. Yeah, we won't get into the details of naming them, but we might mention it when we actually meet those candidates. Let's look at the last category of the midfield, central attackers. So attacking midfielder, we have Baumgartner. Sorry, I have put the right attackers in the wrong place, so I'll just fix that. We have Baumgartner as a definite candidate, and Romano Schmidt as a likely candidate, and Mohamed Cham as a possible candidate, as well as Matthias Seidel. And then 2 players who seem to be off the squad, Louis Schwab and Alexandro Schopf. So I'll just deal with those quickly. Louis Schwab was selected for the Euro 2020, but hasn't been selected since March 2022. Alessandro Schopf actually selected for both tournaments, Euro 2016 and 2020, but last called up in March 2022. So both of those players, actually, if they've been off the squad for that long, we call them retired, although there is a slight chance of a comeback. Okay, let's look at the candidates we have here. We have Christoph Baumgartner as a definite candidate. He is 25 years old and has 36 caps and 13 goals since 2020. He played for Leipzig in Germany since 2023 and was a starter in the Euro Cup there for all 4 games. And he has since started 9 of their 12 games in the recent period, subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 1 other. So always selected and usually starting. And I might as well say here that he's very versatile, playing in several other positions. He was one of the single players who appeared. Sorry, he was one of the players who appeared in single games, both as a left attacker and a right attacker, and we also see as a forward, or we may not see it because it was only once played as a forward there in a 2-man forward line. And the only time they used a 4-4-1-1 formation, he was the secondary striker there. So quite versatile is Christoph Baumgartner and a definite candidate. Our likely candidate is Romano Schmidt. He's 24 years old and has 9 caps since 2022. No goals there. He plays for Werder Bremen in Germany since 2019. Romano Schmidt, and he has started 3 games, including the last 2 over this period, and he was subbed in 4 and on the bench for 3. Sorry, on the bench for 2. So just 3 matches that he wasn't selected for, and could be coming into the picture here, Romano Schmidt. Mohamed Cham is 24 years old and has been with the team since 2022 with 3 caps. He plays for Clermont Foot in France since 2020. And over this period, he didn't start any games, but he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3. However, he was not selected for 8 matches, including the last match. So prior to the last match, he was being selected. So we have Mohamed Cham as a possible candidate. The other possible candidate is Matthias Seidel, and he is 23 years old. Like Cham, he has 3 caps, but in a shorter time. He joined in 2023, and his first appearance on the bench actually in September 2023. And didn't start any games, but he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 6 others. So I'm going to move him on the list here because he seems more likely than Mohamed Cham, although both of them are at the possible level. Okay, and we talked about Schaub and Schopf, who both seem off the team. So let's summarize the position. Actually, this position of central attacker was only used in the 4-2-3-1 formation of the last 3 games. It was Baumgartner in every case there. And as we saw, Baumgartner was very versatile, playing in other positions too. As for Schmidt, I said he had 3 starts, but I'm only seeing him once as a left attacker and once as a central midfielder. So when I say the single players played games, he has been among them. Okay, let's move on to forwards, our last category, and we have a definite candidate in Michael Gregorich. We have, Michael Gregorich is actually coded as a secondary striker. They've only used that position once, and Baumgartner played it. So, for all intents and purposes, Gregorich is a forward here. In fact, I'll move him to forward and make things a bit clearer here. We also have a definite forward in Sasha Kalajic, but another definite candidate who is injured. So I'll come back to talk about that. We have Marko Arnautovic as a possible candidate, and Guido Bergstaller as a possible but unlikely candidate. Finally, we have Junior Adamu as seemingly off the squad. So Junior Adamu last appeared in well, he has not been selected for the last 8 matches, let me put it that way. So Junior Adamu, that's all we'll say about him. Let's go back and talk about these candidates. Michael Gregorich is 30 years old and has been with Austria since 2016 with 53 caps and 14 goals. And in fact, 3 of those goals came in the March games. So he is kind of in good form for them right now. He plays for Freiburg in Germany since 2022. He was a sub in the Euro 2020 World Cup, but since then has become a starter, starting 10 of their 12 games over the recent period and missing 2 due to injury. So Gregorich, a definite candidate here. Sasha Kalajic is out with a cruciate ligament tear since late February and an unknown return date. But unlike some of our other candidates, there is a stronger chance of him returning because it's been a while. Kalajic is 29 years old and sorry, 27 years old, and he's been with Austria since 2020, has 19 caps and 4 goals for them. And he's on the roster at Wolverhampton in England, Wolves, but actually on loan to Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany since 2024. He was a starter in Euro 2020, but lost his position after game one. He did come in as a substitute after that. And since the beginning of this period, 2023, he started one of their 12 games, subbed in for 3, but has been struggling with injury as well. He's out with injury for 4 games, and that includes the first 2 and last 2 matches. And he was not selected for 4 others. So I don't know what I was thinking, putting him as a definite candidate here. I would say he's more of a possible candidate. Okay, so we'll move him down there. The other possible candidate then is Marko Arnautovic. He's probably the biggest veteran on the team, 35 years old now, and has been with Austria since 2008 with 111 caps and 36 goals. And he is on loan with Inter Milan since 2023. He's actually on the roster of Bologna in Italy since 2021, and did a little tryout in China before joining Bologna. Has been on the team. Well, they didn't participate in any other tournaments during his time, so just Euro 2016, where he was a starter, and Euro 2020, where he started as a substitute, but actually did gain a starting position towards the end there. Arnautovic has only started 2 of their 12 games since the start of 2023. Both of those were against Sweden. He also subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 3. And was out with 3 separate injuries for 6 matches. I got to say, those matches kind of coincide with international periods. So there are a couple of kind of veterans who really don't play many qualification matches, but then come for tournaments. And I wonder if that's what Arnautovic does, but I'm not sure. Okay, the other sorry, we did have 2 other possible candidates. I just forgot to introduce them, so I'll quickly do that now. It's Manpreet Sarkaria and Maximilian Entrup are also possible candidates. Sarkaria is 28 years old and has 1 cap since 2023. He plays for Sturm Graz in Austria. Got his first appearance on the bench in June of 2023. And as I said, just started 1 game, one game on the bench for 4, injured for 2, and not selected for 3. So Sarkaria, a possible candidate. The other, Maximilian Entrup, is 27 years old and also been with the squad since 2023, but he does have 2 caps and 1 goal. He plays for Hartberg, one of the lesser clubs in Austria there, since 2023. He got his first appearance on the bench just before this period began in November 2022 and didn't start any games. Sorry, he does have 2 caps. Yes, he was subbed in for 2 games and on the bench for 2 others. And I'm mistaken. He got his first start in 2023 on the bench. And for 2 of the remaining 4 games, he was subbed in, and for 2 others on the bench. Our possible but unlikely candidate is a bit of a funny story. Guido Bergstaller. He returned to the team. We won't go into too much detail. He returned to the team in October 2023 after a more than 4-year absence. He subbed into that game 82 minutes in, and in the 8 remaining minutes managed to get a red card and was off the team again. So he was suspended for the following game and then not called up after that. So Guido Bergstaller, an inglorious look into the team, but looks like an unlikely candidate now. Okay, let's summarize the position of forward. So it is a two-man position in the 4-4-2, which they use about half the time, but equally as much it's a one-man or a single forward. Either way, the position was filled by Gregoric. Sarkaria and Kaladzic were each the single starting forward when Gregoric was injured. However, they were not among the several players who started alongside Gregoric in the 4-4-2. That was all single game players except for Arnautovic, who started two matches, both of them against Sweden. All right, that brings us to the end of our look at the candidates, and so we move on to section 3, beginning with closing thoughts. So I think the story for Austria is some injuries to serious, definite starters. So that's really going to be a problem for them. And they don't really have the bench strength to cover that as well as bigger countries might have. So it's a consideration. So we've already seen a lot of players playing out of position, and I think to cover these injuries, we'll see even more of that. So we will kind of review the injuries later, but let's just race through the squad again here and review the players that we know to be starters. So manager Ralph Rangnick, we'll call him a starter because he won't be replaced at this point. Alexander Schlager is our goalkeeper, who is injured. We'll talk later about how certainly they are injured, but looks quite certain in this case. So the potential starters would be very inexperienced players, Patrick Pence or Tobias Lowell. So I suspect that they're going to bring back one of the more experienced players who seem to be off the squad at this point, but who very well may be called back. So I'm thinking Daniel Bachmann or Heinz Lindner. Either way, we're not in a position at this point to confidently say any of these will be starters. If Schlager is out, of course, Schlager will be the starter if he is fit to play. And we have much the same situation in central defense. Philipp Lienhardt, a definite candidate, looks like he might be out. And also the first likely candidate, David Alaba, who's been playing as a central defender over this period, also out. So that leaves not many possibilities. In fact, I think we're going to get players coming in from other positions to cover in central defense. So with those two players, Lienhardt out, especially Lienhardt, we can't nominate a starter in this position. Probably the most likely one is Kevin Danzo. Okay, over on the left back position, I'm going to be predictive here. Maximilian Wober is a definite candidate and under normal circumstances may well be the starter, but he's actually coded as a central defender and has played there. So I think he's almost certain to go back to central defense. And alongside Danzo, I would predict that he is going to be a starting defender. But I don't really feel confident enough to nominate him as a starter. Hang on a second, I'm just going to check that. Actually, I do. No, not quite confident enough to say he's going to be a starter. I actually am confident enough to think that Philip Mwini is going to be the starter at left back. So I'm going to highlight his name. On the right side, Stefan Poch looks like the most likely candidate, but I'm not going to nominate him as a starter, especially since Stefan Lehner has come back into the picture. Stefan Poch is also coded as a central defender, so there's an outside chance of him moving back into central defense and Lehner playing as the starting right back, as he has done in the past, in the Euro 2020, for example. Anyway, no definite candidates there. Let's move on to central midfield. And here, definite candidate is Nicholas Seawald. He has no experience at tournaments, but has stormed into the squad and will be a starter. Actually, probably alongside him will be Florian Grilic. It would have been more likely Xaver Schlager, but he's got an injury concern, so that kind of leaves it to Florian Grilic. Leaves the starting role to Florian Grilic, but I'm not going to nominate Grilic because he just hasn't started enough games, only 4 of their 12 games. So I'll just leave it as kind of my own speculation there that he will be a starter. Anyway, Seawald definitely a starter. Left and right midfielders. They don't really use that position, so we're looking at left attackers and right attackers. On the left side, we have Wimmer and Sabitzer. Again, neither of them has seized the position enough to merit being named a starter. I think I'll just highlight them both in blue and say it'll be one or the other, or actually quite likely a rotation of them. And but they both played in different positions, so they might be used in different positions, perhaps even on the field at the same time. On the right side, though, it's a different story. We can confidently nominate Konrad Lehmer as the starter, and there we go. And central attackers, well, we have Christoph Baumgart here. They actually don't use that formation a lot that requires a central attacker, but we have seen him kind of all over the field as a starter. So he's going to start somewhere, we think, or we're confident enough to highlight him there. And moving up to the forward line, Michael Gregorich also will definitely be a starter, we think, and so we can nominate him. Okay, that's that. Now, review of injuries, quite important for us here, and we have Alexander Schlager to begin with, the goalkeeper. Their starting goalkeeper in recent times since the start of 2023, and he is out for knee surgery since early May and an unknown return date. So I'll put him in the unknown category, but knee surgery since May, come on, that looks like he's not going to be able to recover. Next, we have Philip Leinhardt, and I think it's a knee problem for him. Sorry, I'm just finding my spot here. Okay, I got it. Yes, he was out with a knee injury since late December and until the end of the season. He was out for all that time. So, and then suddenly he's not listed as an injury concern. But I'm thinking if he didn't play up until the end of the season, that at least he will have fitness issues as far as playing for the team, if not just being out and out injured. So I'm going to say Philip Leinhardt. Well, we'll say he's an unknown. But I'm a bit doubtful of him. And it's the same situation with David Alaba, out with a cruciate ligament injury from late December until the end of the season, but also not listed as injured. But again, I think there's going to be at least fitness concerns there. So we're going to keep him on the list as injured and out till an unknown date. Actually, no, I'm going to put them in the close call category since they're not listed as injured, but we'll really have to update this when the squads come out. Xaver Schlager, just like goalkeeper Alexander Schlager, he is also out. He's out with a cruciate ligament injury since mid-May and an unknown return date. And finally, Sasha Kaladzic, out with a cruciate ligament injury since late February and an unknown return date. So some serious issues there, all to players who are at the likely or definite level otherwise. So really something we're going to have to keep an eye on. And we will keep an eye on it because in part 2, which will come out when the squad lists are released and finalized, we're going to update these injuries as well as going through our list again and pointing out any notable non-selections and any surprise inclusions, which will include, probably will include a couple of new players. So stay tuned for part 2. We would like to thank Mike Kripak, Make Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.